We are back. We are live once again with my co-host, David D'Abato. We have been focusing on all sorts of stuff on this daily half-hour live stream. Obviously, the Iran war has been the centerpiece of this, but also Ukraine, how the US is trying to throw Ukraine under the bus by getting it to give up Donbass, its sort of fortified area, that incredible meat grinder that is turning Russian troops into sunflower fertilizer. So there's all sorts of stuff we're going to touch upon today. We are going to start, however, with Karg Island and the apparent US willingness still to take that. It's thought, well, we at least speculate that this is likely to go ahead, even though many believe it won't from Trump's words. How many years of listening to Trump's words and still believing them? I mean, that's yeah, I don't know how to explain that one. But we're going to get into that in a minute. David, a couple of words from you before we launch into it.
Well, hello. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, we're going to talk about Iran. Obviously, that's what's going on. It's the most important story in the world. I just very quickly, as I always do, want to ask folks to tune into my YouTube station, which is No Delusion Zone, my channel, YouTube channel No Delusion Zone, as well as my Substack, which is Protecting the Republic. And that's more important than ever right now in the States, protecting therepublic.com at Substack. And before we launch into Iran, Jonathan, as I mentioned off air, kind of a surprise to me anyway, the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, just resigned yesterday. Her party, I think it's the Social Democrats, but in any event, her party lost the election, or at least they won a very slim majority, and she resigned. And that was almost a direct result of standing up to Trump, although it also proved to me that not just in the UK or the States, are voters clueless, or at least they don't think 10 seconds into the future, because apparently the votes against Frederiksen had to do with the price of fertilizer and taxes against pig farmers. So the fact that they very well may become under attack from Russia and maybe under the Russian boot again in the next several years was not as important as pork futures. So this kind of pisses me off, but it's not unexpected. And lastly, or at least before we get into the Iran story, ICE, those gentle, nice folks from the Department of Homeland Security that are now patrolling America's airports with brutal force. A new story just came out today on Substack that they have been paying cash payments to local police, local law enforcement, to assist them in identifying and arresting and taking into custody anyone they think may be an illegal immigrant. So you've got, and it's called exclusive ISIS bounty hunters, which are essentially local police who are being deputized with cash gifts and awards to help with the I won't say brutal, but with apprehending anybody that they think may be illegal. Essentially, a lot of times that's people with darker skin than them. And that's all I have until we launch into Iran. And I do have some very brief videos and some other things about that. And actually, this is an Iran story, and then I'll turn it over to you for the remainder, Jonathan. American combat veterans, of which I am proudly one, are seeing something disturbing in the new memes and videos that are coming out from Pete Hegseth, Pistol Pete's Pentagon, about the war. They're announcing these strikes, including that horrific strike on a girls' school in Iran, which killed over 150 girls, with cartoons, with funny memes, with videos and music coming out of video games. This is just cosplay to them. This is just a video game. And as Trump said, why did he invade Iran? One of the statements was because it's fun. Well, according to Trump and Hegseth and some of the other geniuses in the American military establishment, the war is being reduced to memes and video games as Americans, as well as Iranians, of course, are dying. This is really pissing off a lot of veterans. I'm not going to read the whole article because we're kind of at a disadvantage with time today, but it's basically saying that many combat veterans, who some of them voted for Trump and are registered Republicans, are disgusted with the way that the Pentagon is treating this war and reducing it essentially to a funny video game.
And that is, of course, gross. Again, to those paying attention, maybe not a surprise. I mean, Hegseth is hardly a serious individual. I mean, he's a dangerous individual, but hardly a serious individual, and we've seen that over and over. I mean, the sight of him berating the united ranks of American officers who were all sort of pulled together from all corners of the world, and then sat there while he tried to humiliate them, talking about basic physical, PT and whatever, and nothing strategic. I mean, this is just par for the course. This is who these individuals are. It's just all about the grift, the mockery, and the superficiality. And of course, ultimately, it's all about kowtowing to Trump in a way that is truly disgusting, abhorrent, and reminiscent of North Korea. Listening to Michael Wolff and others describe how the framework of interactions between Rubio and others and Trump is truly sickening. It seems they cannot bring anything even vaguely truthful unless it contains Trump's name, unless it is grotesquely obsequious and flattering. This is worse in some ways than Putin's system.
Well,
worse in terms of the flattery and the lies.
Well, absolutely. As a follow-up to Trump saying, lying the other day, that he's involved in negotiations with Iran to end the war, it's a lie. But as a follow-up to that, Pete Hegseth said, well, we negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran about your future.
So this thing about liberating the Iranian people, about delivering democracy and releasing from the yoke of a tyrannical regime, after the Iranian people have showed extraordinary courage over the last couple of years in trying to overthrow that regime, all the rhetoric out of the Trump administration is just almost pure demonization of all of Iran. And all the rhetoric is about how we've flattened it, demolished it, reduced it to a car park. It's done, it's gone, it's obliterated. Yep. Well, firstly, that's not true. It's Orwellian in terms of the scale of its lies and pure sort of disingenuous nonsense. But it's also kind of obscene on a human level. Well, let's turn to lies, because the other lie is Trump saying, yes, he's negotiating, that, this is almost over and just wait a couple of more days and you'll see, and it's great, etc. All the while, American troops are building up. And the profile of those troops suggest a ground operation. What do we know about this?
Well, what we know so far is for sure that there are two Marine expeditionary units, MEUs, that are steaming towards the Persian Gulf, towards this theater of operations in the Middle East. One will be there as early as tomorrow, and the other one, which is coming from Camp Pendleton, California, is going to take at least another 2 to 3 weeks to be there. They each have approximately 2,200 or so combat Marines, as well as supporting and logistical forces, helicopters, supplies, and so forth, landing craft along with them. It's a flotilla, usually, I believe, of 3 different vessels that accompany them. So they're en route there, and within 2 weeks or so will be in place. We also now know that the 82nd Airborne Division, the elite paratroopers that are stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, they have also been deployed there. Not all of them, but approximately 3,000 or so paratroopers from the 82nd are deploying in theater, where they're going to land and stage, meaning where are they going to deploy from once they land, whether that's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, or whatever, we don't know. And we don't know their ultimate goal yet, or what their plan of attack is. Are they going to paratroop into Carg Islands? Are they going to supplement or back up the Marines? Are they going to try or attempt to extract the fissionable material that's buried in at least 1 or 2 or 3 different locations underground in Iran rather? I hope not, because they're not capable. They're not trained to do that, but we don't know where the 82nd is going to go. We also know that other special forces troops, operators have already been alerted, have already been deployed. They're in theater. We don't know exactly where. Altogether, it's about 10,000 or so elite American troops that are either in theater right now around the Persian Gulf or are en route and will be there within a couple of weeks or so. Aside from Karg Island and the possible nuclear buried sites, fissionable areas that are buried, we don't know exactly what the goal is because the White House hasn't told us, because I don't think that they know. But I believe the invasion of Karg Island is a certainty. I also believe they are going to either try to capture the Iranian government, which is insane, or again, to extract whatever is left in the mines buried beneath the Iranian desert of their nuclear fissionable material. That's pretty much all we know right now, and it's all happening within, I believe, the next 2 to 3 weeks, possibly a little bit longer.
And this is extraordinary high risk. So if we turn to Venezuela, it seems from what we know that operation was carried out with meticulous precision, organization, but it was also carried out with potentially cooperation from inside the regime.
Bribes.
One could almost say a fait accompli. It's
They were
like
bribed. Yeah.
they bribed, they threatened, they blackmailed, and of course they worked with internal rivalries. It's clear now that faced with the choice of being loyal to the leader, the deputy leader chose her own skin, her own fortune, and in the end willingly cooperated to become the replacement, to acquiesce to this operation. I mean, putting aside the rights and the wrongs, that's an extraordinary level of intelligence, an extraordinary level of planning, and incredible execution. If they are hoping to pull the same thing off, I'm guessing that not all the same pieces are in play within Iran. Do they have people within the regime who are going to cooperate with them? I doubt it, because that's a death sentence. In this regime, the far more ideologically based regime, that is an absolute death sentence. Anyone cooperating with the Yanks would not be tolerated within those regime terms and by their compatriots. But just knowing where these people are in order to take them out or round them up, and given the size of Tehran, given the size of Iran as a country and its huge population and difficult and various terrain, it just seems to me the variables make this an extraordinarily risky operation. The potential for huge American casualties and the kind of visuals of defeat that we saw in Vietnam. You remember those clips with the helicopters trying to get people off roofs, the panicked flight, tipping helicopters off aircraft carriers. I mean, those pictures of defeat were visceral and extraordinary. Trump may well be queuing America up for just such a visual whomping.
Well, the lack of knowledge, the lack of depth of any knowledge of Iran, their history, their makeup, their demographics, or anything about this nation or this area of the world is stunning. And apparently they don't care. The generals at the Pentagon, the admirals, the special operators, the people in charge of SOCOM and the special operators, they know. Our intelligence agencies, they know what Iran is all about. But Trump and Hegseth and the sycophants around them are not listening. They don't even attend intelligence briefings, so they don't listen to the facts about what's going on the ground in Iran right now. So extraordinarily dangerous, yeah. And it's going to be horrendous if, and I say if they carry out some of the missions that seem to be in the planning stages, meaning the invasion and holding occupation of Karg Island or one of the other islands in that area of the Persian Gulf, the attempt to seize, to dig up, extract, and remove the fissionable material buried in the desert in Iran, the possibility of capturing the leadership of the Iranian government. These are all foolhardy goals. And no, it's nothing like what happened in South America at all. There's nobody going to be bribed here. I doubt if they have anybody in any position of authority that's working with America, and certainly not with Israel right now. So no, it's insane. And I'm not the only one to say this. I mean, this has not been planned. Jonathan, we still don't know the goal. We don't know the end game of why we are in Iran. It was regime change. Then it was about extracting their nuclear materials. Then it was about cutting off their oil. Then it was about seizing their oil.
And then it was about
what the hell are we doing?
Threat. You know, they were going to attack everybody, etc., etc.
Absolutely.
Now, this is interesting because this may well have been the case that Netanyahu put to Trump. No, look at this. They're about to attack everyone. It's all kicking off, blah, blah, blah. You can save the world, etc., etc. But that is very likely to have been a highly curated. That's
Netanyahu's
an
game.
Unfair word. You know, yeah.
Look,
it's
America and Israeli interest and goals in this diverge. Netanyahu, and not all of it, Israel, actually, most of them don't agree with him at this point. But Netanyahu and the far right in Israel, including the military, want to absolutely obliterate Iran. They feel that the only way they can maintain their national security is to just eliminate the state of Iran. The hell with trying to deal with them, negotiate them, and apparently the hell with trying to negotiate with other Arab states, especially Lebanon, which they're now in the process of occupying. So no, this is Netanyahu's war. It's really not going to help the national security of the United States, Jonathan. It's certainly not going to help the national security of any country in Europe. And by the way, if folks out there watching this still think that we have bled Iran dry of all of their drones, all of their ballistic missiles, all of their ammunition, I want to play a 57-second clip about that. This is not the most unbiased individual. He's a professor, an Iranian professor, but he speaks, I think, for the most part, the truth. Take a listen to this.
It should be very easy for them. I mean, if Iran is obliterated, then they should just walk in. But obviously, Iran's capabilities have not been obliterated. After the first 2-3 days, the Trump regime claimed that Iran was running out of missiles and drones. Well, over the last week, we've seen intensified strikes across the board coming from Iran. And there is no shortage of missiles and drones because they are deep underground, well protected. And so are the factories that produce them. In fact, Iran's air defense capabilities are largely also kept in underground bases. The bulk of Iran's navy, they are speedboats with missiles, and they're all also in underground tunnels. When the time comes, I think we will witness the Iranian Navy, the Iranian air defenses, the Iranian drone and missile capabilities intensify.
There you have it. And again, he's not unbiased. I'll give you that. But I believe he speaks primarily the truth when he speaks about the arsenal that still remains in Iran with ballistic missiles, with drones, and those high-powered speedboats that they can and will deploy, not to mention mines.
Absolutely. They haven't even, let's say, triggered the Houthis and the Red Sea, which we talked about yesterday.
Yes.
I think this has the ring of truth. It's speculation that we've had all through the week. The other speculation is just how many of these Shahed-type drones does Iran have? Because so far it's been shown that there is no cost-effective defense against these amongst the Middle Eastern allies of the United States, and the United States has not developed cost-effective ways to counter them either. So if this were to escalate, and I think the Karg Island we're talking about would unleash probably a significant and continuous barrage by the Iranians from their Shahed stocks, I would suspect that a lot of these would get through. And a lot of these would cause considerable damage and considerable anxiety in places like Dubai and so on, whose economic model is already looking shaky. This really could go to a very dark place, or darker place, very quickly.
Well, I agree with you. And one of the other things we discussed at least a couple of times is not only decimating the economies of the Gulf states, forget about the United States and Europe, but of the Gulf states, What about, and we've discussed this, their water, their drinking water, the desalinization plants for which the Gulf states depend. If those are eliminated, which Iran has threatened to do, they already hit one. It's game over. It's game over for the Gulf states. They will have no drinking water, or very, very few. They'll run out. The estimates are within 2 to 3 months. They won't have any water, and that's no joke. I put this up on the screen. These are just examples of some of the Iranian drones. It's in Farsi, but you can take a look at what they look like. There's several of them, and if they have anywhere near the numbers buried underground, which I've read estimates in various publications, anywhere from 20 to 80 plus thousand of these squirreled away, not to mention the very, very cheap ones, the ones that are almost off the shelf, but that they assemble underground. So, and they're getting through. I mean, obviously they're getting through, and that has nothing to do with the ballistic missiles that I believe and other experts believe are buried underground in the thousands. I think I posted a graphic yesterday that they've been squirreling away 8,000 of these drones for the last 40 some years. So they've got a bunch of these underground as well.
I mean, this is potentially a fearsome arsenal, even though big chunks of the leadership are wiped out, which ironically makes it very difficult to know who to negotiate with, if indeed there are negotiations. You know, if you cut as many heads off the snake as happened, yes, new ones will regrow, but for a time, you're not really going to have an enemy to negotiate with seriously, because they're still reconstituting their forces. For the optics, they probably can't be seen to be negotiating after sustaining such losses. So this is another problem created by the United States. There is no one who they can reasonably negotiate with. There's no one who can, for their own safety and status, negotiate in this time frame. So this is a bit of a cul-de-sac, it seems to me. This is something of a war trap that Trump has got the US into. Either the outcome is humiliating defeat or escalation, which entails extraordinary risk. Now, you talked yesterday about the fact that he's still bringing a lot of MAGAs with him. Having said that, other polls suggest that on non-foreign policy issues, such as, you know, the price of groceries, the price of gas, he's losing them. He is massively underwater in all of these polls on issues where he edged ahead of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris essentially lost because people did not believe that the economy was in a good state, did not believe that the Biden administration had a control of expenses. Well, you know, that seems laughable now, but they rated her ability to fix the economy lower than Trump. He is now tens of points lower tracking. So yes, maybe they don't get geopolitics. Maybe they don't really link the pain of their individual expenses to what he's doing in the Middle East, but they are noticing the costs at home. And it seems to me that he's going to be punished for that if a free and fair election can take place.
God, I wish I could agree with you on that. I mean, I agree with you that they're noticing it and they're upset. And you see sound bites all the time on YouTube and on the internet. MAGA voters voicing regret, buyer's remorse about voting for Trump. However, as that poll showed you, 89% of them support this war in Iran. And like with any war of almost any country, almost all the citizens rally around their leader when that happens. In fact, that's what's going on in Iran right now. Not only that, but one thing that Trump, one of the things he's very, very good at, unfortunately, is stoking rage. And the people that love Trump, that have always loved Trump, always will vote for Trump, are enraged. He can just enrage them by saying something anti-Semitic or saying something racist, or right now saying something about Iran, or blaming the Democrats still and Joe Biden for the high prices at the gas pump, the high prices in the supermarket. And they're buying this. They may complain that prices are going up everywhere, but they also believe, Jonathan, that this is a result of Joe Biden, even though he's been out of office for a year and a half, that this is all the Democrats' fault. So owning the libs and hating who Donald Trump hates and his racist views, even neo-Nazi views, are more important and get more traction with the MAGA voters than the price of gasoline, even though they will admit it hurts them and they're upset right now.
Let's then turn to where sources of resistance might come from if this goes catastrophically wrong. Let's say they take Kharg Island, and all the military assessments suggest that yes, they could take it, and that's feasible, with maybe even minimal losses. But the attritional losses will actually come in trying to hold it, secure it. And then the big question is, well, where do you go from there? Because if taking this island doesn't solve the problem of the Straits and controlling the Straits of Hormuz, which if Iran has these ballistics and drones and ships in waiting and the crews potentially to man them, then actually controlling Kharg Island will not just not solve that problem. It will create an ongoing sore or bleeding wound, as you know, they're sitting ducks on this piece of territory. You know, they won't be able to sort of dig in to depths that they can escape missiles and so on. And it'll be sort of, you know, shooting apples in a barrel, it seems to me. Now, who's going to resist when that happens, when it's visibly and tangibly a disaster and the bodies are piling up? Will there be resistance from the military? Will there be resistance within the Republican Party? Will there be any sort of legal resistance? Will there be you know, as we saw in the Afghan war in the 70s, will there be sort of mothers of soldiers, veterans? Where is the resistance going to come from, David?
Well, initially, it will come from, of course, the families of the deceased soldiers. You're right. I mean, when they start coming back in those wooden coffins with, you know, the flagged drape coffins, and Trump greets him with his damn "Make America Great Again" hat like a buffoon and a disgraceful son of a bitch, they're going to start.
And a full diaper, you know.
Just unbelievable. But they're going to be the first ones. Yes, there's going to be demonstrations. No Kings are going to go all over the streets and go nuts. But, you know, I have to give a little plug to Malcolm Nance. I was just watching him before we came on here, and he was making the point that I make every minute that I'm asked, which is, where the hell are the Democrats? They should be on the steps of the Capitol or even outside the White House every day, calling Trump out, not just on the Iranian war, but on all of his lies, on all the fact that the prices are going up because of him, not Joe Biden and not the Democrats. So my question to you and to the viewers is, what are the Democrats going to do? They are the opposition, at least the elected opposition. I am an opposition voice, but not as powerful as the Democrats. What are they going to do? I'll try to answer it. Not enough. They're just not going to do enough. Schumer, the Senate leader, you know, he just makes me so angry. He needs to resign. I don't see the Democrats launching successful, coordinated, unified resistance that amounts to anything when the bodies start coming back. The only thing that's going to change anything, Jonathan, is what did happen during the Vietnam War, and that's grassroots. The American people are going to have to take to the streets, not in violent riots, as did happen during Vietnam, in peaceful but massive, massive demonstrations. I'm talking tens of millions of people every weekend in all major American cities and in Washington, D.C. If that happens, yes, it will change things. No, they're not going to. Even Trump, he's not going to send the army out there to slaughter everybody in the street. He may try. The military is not going to do that. That is the only possible thing that will happen. And you're asking me, will that happen? I don't know. With the media and the all of the organs of government, the Supreme Court, most of the federal courts, just under the thumb, the law firms under the thumb of Donald Trump. So there's not a coordinated media message, a national message to get everybody together. It's much harder than it ever has been. So I have to admit, I'm doubtful. I'm doubtful that even if it's a tragedy, a military tragedy, that it's going to get to the point where Donald Trump has to leave office and that MAGA is going to lose. I wish I could say differently, but at this point I can't.
I mean, No Kings has brought a lot of people onto the streets. As you say, the media is stacked against it. So there's a template for that. Also, I'm guessing that if people meet in relatively small groups, then you will see ICE being deployed to try to confront, break up, create an alternative news story of leftist insurrection. But if the numbers are huge, then this really is not going to be possible.
Yes, that's
for
the
ICE to be deployed.
only way. And that's the only reason that Vietnam actually stopped when it did. Nixon would have kept going on. He would have bombed all the way to China if he could. Kept bombing North Vietnam, but it was the massive street demonstrations, some of which were violent, but the massive street demonstrations that changed all of that. We are going to have to do that in this country now, even more so, and not violent demonstrations, just huge and consistent. Whether or not that can be done in this country with all of the constraints that the Trump administration has placed on all of the pillars, all of the organs of our government and society, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I hope that we can, but I don't know. It's going to be very difficult.
Well, we're going to have to end here. It's worth just putting this comment up. We were aware when we played the clip earlier that this guy is a regime hack. I wasn't aware he'd appear on RT, but that's not surprising because Iran and Russia are allies. But what we pointed out is, yes, he's a hack, but that particular statement he made, and we're not validating anything else he's said or done, but those particular statements he made had a ring of truth, and it's certainly worth considering.
Well, they've been validated by many conservative commentators here in the States. They've been validated by senior U.S. generals and admirals, both on active duty and retired. So I get your point. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. And in this case, I think he's correct.
And if we're not listening to that, if we're not taking into account the strategic risk and going into these things with absolutely no consideration, then more fool us, frankly. That's what we have to end. I'm going to jump off here. Thank you to everyone for joining in the comments. Hopefully we'll get a bunch of people watching this once it sort of goes up on the channel. Do tune in 2 o'clock every day. Tomorrow we have our dear friend Timothy Ash talking about the economics of the Iran war, the global meltdown, the sanctions lifting on Russia, but also the fact that Ukraine has been extraordinarily effective in shutting down Russian oil export to countermand that. So lots of interesting issues just tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today.
Go to No Delusion Zone. Do this.